Hi, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of The Hitstreak. Check it out. I got to give a big shout out to my show sponsor, my friends over at AVLX. I also have to give a big shout out to Charles Henry and Ace Young, the amazing performers and producers of the music behind the show, as well as the amazing people that make up the Hit Lab creative team, who are the producers of the show. Folks, I have a favor to ask. If you like what you hear, and I know you do, click that subscribe button to make sure you get alerted when new episodes are dropped. Thanks for tuning in.
The real success stories told by the people who live them.
We're going to have some guests on this show that everybody knows, and we're going to have guests on this show that nobody knows yet.
One by one, Nick Hyder is adding hits to the hit streak.
Blessings, folks. Welcome back to another episode of The Hit Streak. I'm your man, Nick Hyder, and check it out. Today, we are really diving into the world of leadership, right? Today, we're actually taking the hill. And in the studio with me today, in the Hit Lab, I've got none other than multi-award-winning artist, songwriter, speaker, and outdoorsman, my man, Erik Bledsoe. Erik, thanks so much for hanging with us today, brother. It's an honor.
Thank you, Nick. I'm glad to be here, and I've been looking forward to it a long time.
So I told everybody right out of the gates that we're taking the hill.
Yeah.
Right? What are we talking about? What is taking the hill?
Yeah, Take the Hill. So I am honored to preside over a nonprofit called Take the Hill, and the way that we arrive at that name is that a king takes a hill by putting his flag on it. And the guy that carries the flag is called the standard bearer. And so what we want to do is raise the standard. Jesus said, if I be lifted up, right? Solomon said, his banner over me is love. And Jesus said, if I be lifted up, I'll draw all people to myself. So as the standard bearer for Christians, what we want to do is lift Jesus up in a way so that people can see him for who he is, and then raise the standard on what it means to be a follower of Jesus in, 2022.
You came out swinging. We're adding hits to the hit streak already. Dude, that was, I don't know if I've ever heard it said like that. The king takes the hill and puts his flag on it.
Yeah.
That's incredible, dude.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Because a husband has to do that at home.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. We could probably spend 3 hours just talking about that one statement you just made.
Yeah.
All right. So, you are the president of Take the Hill Ministries, which you mentioned is a Christian nonprofit dedicated to training college students and young adults in faith and leadership. Right out of Nashville, Tennessee.
Yeah, that's right.
But look, a lot of people might know you for some of the other success that you've had in the past. So let's talk a little bit about that. I mentioned a minute ago that you were you're a multi-award-winning artist and songwriter. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, for sure. So I ended up graduating from Belmont University, and actually signed a record deal out of my junior year. Okay. And so I had paid my way through college, if you can say that. Lord was just generous, but had scholarships at all the universities I went to sing on their behalf. When I got to Nashville, ended up studying music business, left early with a record deal on Empire Records with a band called Ransom. It was a country kind of Christian hybrid thing. Was there just maybe a year, and then went solo, and have been solo really ever since until COVID. And so was able to win several awards, New Artist of the Year, a songwriting award through the Gospel Music Association, and then have had top 40 songs through country music as a writer and jazz and different things like that. So
that's awesome.
It's been great.
So the reason that I'm bringing this up is because everything that when you do something new, like the new nonprofit, similar to when I've done something new, there was a whole bunch of things that culminated that led to that.
That's right.
Right. So it's important to tell the story that got you there. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So you are a little bit more about you though, right? So you spent over 2 decades as a touring professional in the Christian music industry with multiple top 40 appearances. You've been a worship leader and teaching pastor. You've helped launch 4 new churches. You're also a husband and a father.
Yeah.
right? So, man, I've had
Everything.
lucky guys so far on the show. All of the guys have been married to like supermodels. You're included in that. You know what I'm saying?
I believe that, Maz. Yeah. And Betsy thanks you.
So, well, I met you at the baseball field. Like I've met many folks.
Yeah.
At Creve Hall.
Yeah.
Here in Nashville when our kids were really young. Ethan was 6 and Henry was 5, I believe.
That's right.
And then I met you there, and I never will forget the first time we had a conversation right there on the bottom of that little hill next to the lower field.
Yeah.
We were probably there for an hour
Oh, yeah.
talking about
Yeah,
stuff.
for sure.
And the kids were throwing ball
Yeah.
off of the side. It was a lot of
Yeah.
fun.
I still remember Ethan made fast friends with Henry and I. Of course, I was a third base coach, I think, during that
That's
game.
right.
And he was like, "You're my new man." So like, I'm locked onto you. And I think he was even playing third base. So we just became friends. It was so fun.
Yes.
And of course, I don't know if we're going to talk about this much today, but my first career, if you will, was in insurance until I signed. I know I was in university, but it takes a little while before the economics of touring work out for a young artist. And so my father, I was raised in an insurance home.
That's right.
Dad, talking about premiums and policies my whole life around
Yes, sir.
spaghetti, you know. And so I got my license when I was 18, and my brother and I just hit the ground running back then. So also very familiar with your world. So I remember talking about that,
Yeah.
you know, at the fence and just having so much in common, but ultimately that we loved our sons.
Yes.
We were on the baseball field and wanted to see them be successful.
Yes.
And then we found out we had faith in common, and of course both of our wives were there. And so I love when we get to meet in that context versus in a professional context and you have to find your way to family. It's much easier to start with family, you know, and work your way that way.
Amen to that. It was we had one thing that stuck out to me in common, and that was that, like, when we wake up every day, what can we do good for somebody else?
That's it.
You know what I mean? Because that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
I get one. That's what it's all about. There's one right there.
That was you called me one time about some sort of opportunity to be generous. I forget what it was. And I still remember that was your phrase, and I locked onto that. You said, "Hey, here's this opportunity. Why don't you and I partner together and go do something good for somebody else?" I get asked all the time to do things.
Absolutely.
But it's about how you frame it, you know. Hey, we can go bless this person together.
Yes.
And we do a lot better job together.
Yes.
Would you help me go do this? As opposed to, I have this cause. Would you get behind it? Do you know what I'm saying?
I do.
That meant a lot to me. So, yeah.
So, Take the Hill is it's about leadership. It's about the king putting the flag.
That's it.
Putting the flag in the dirt, right? So, tell me a little bit about how your previous careers leading up to this point. Why this calling? Why leadership is so important to you?
Yeah. So I was raised in an incredible home. My father, I knew two things. He loved Jesus and he loved my mama, you know, and he was going to do everything he could to maximize those two relationships, including raise me well, you know. And so, but once I got to college, I learned that every man was not like my father. And so just really experienced some woundedness under other leaders that caused me to question my faith. And I didn't have answers for those things. I often say I confused Jesus and the church and ran away from them both. And so I found myself in a very lonely place until I met another man named Rob Bell. He's a bit famous for some controversial books he's written at this point, but I love him. And he said, "Hey, let me show you a better way. Because I think maybe you need, there's some healing you need, but I can show you how to access his faith, as opposed to checking the box and going to church and doing the thing." And man, he just began to pour into me. And so when I finally did get on tour and began to be hired to do all of these Christian events, host conferences, retreats, I speak and sing and lead worship at all these things, from 50 teenagers on a mountainside to in the summers we play 1,000 people plus regularly. What happened was I fell in love with these kids, and I would come back year after year, and some of them would flourish, and most would fall away. Where I would find them in a similar position or worse than I had seen them before. And so I started, honestly, just broke my heart, where I was like, why have you not improved? And not in a scorecard way, but like, why is the quality of your life not better because of the gospel?
Right.
Why are you not experiencing what Jesus would call a more abundant life than the one you had before, based on the thing? And so it came down to who was leading in their lives and who they had to look up to. That was showing them the way to go. The very same thing that made the difference in my heart, which was somebody coming across saying, hey, it's not just about believing these things, it's about implementing them in your life. And so at Take the Hill, we just say that we're a community of brothers and sisters in Christ committed to helping each other fall in love with Jesus and follow him well on Monday morning so that we can fulfill our calling, take the hill, and change the world. And I find that most people lack the clarity and the confidence they need around who they are and who Jesus is and how to integrate those two things in a way that yields a meaningful impact. And so I'm not so concerned with teaching theology as much as I am the practical side.
Dude, there's so many places to get the theology.
That's it.
But the practical side is what's missing.
That's it. They need a spiritual father, like legit father,
Yeah.
to say, my son comes to me and says, Dad, I'm experiencing this thing. Yesterday, he's kicking a football. And he was kicking a football through the chain links of a tree swing we have, right? Because he wants to learn to be a kicker. Awesome. And I said, buddy, that's awesome, but that's a 5-foot goal. You need a 10-foot goal from further back. So we measured. I told him what he needed to do. I watched him do it and said, hey, that's a great result, but you'd have a better result if you did this. By the end of the day, he was kicking 25-yard field goals through a true upright. We have
That's
a break.
awesome.
And I was like, son, we've gone from kicking 15-foot field goals through a tree swing to kicking 25-foot legit extra points, like in one day.
Yeah.
But it's because you have a wise guide who can say, I know you. I understand how I see your goal. I'm not you. I don't have the ability to do what you have to do, but I can help you make the transition to get what you're after. And that has become my greatest joy, is seeing where somebody's at, helping them measure and go, hey, you want to be approved. I know you do. Like every young man wants to be a true man, but a woman can't make you a man. And I used to believe that lie until another man said, you need a man to make you a man, son. Like, let me help you do what a man does. What does that look like?
Yeah.
Cool. A man goes to bed with his wife. He doesn't live a separate life after she goes to bed. He wakes up before she does. He gets alone with a copy of the Word of God and says, Lord, I'm here. Speak to me.
Yeah.
Gets a cup of black coffee. And
Maybe two.
Maybe two. Two for me. I have those big, they're barrels. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right.
Growlers full of coffee. And says, Lord, I'm here. Speak to me. I'm here because your word says you want to meet with me, because you're in this room before me, anticipating my arrival. Your word says you actually want to eat with me. You're not going to yell at me. You're not mad at me. And even just restoring that image of what it means for God to be our Father. And then after I have that time, quiet time, and say, Lord, help me to apply this, because Jesus said, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and don't do what I say? So now, wow. So I have to think about, how do I love my neighbor? My dad told me my whole life the difference between a dream and a goal is a pen and a piece of paper.
Oh, man.
And it usually involves a calendar. And if a person doesn't say when, so just learning these questions that we ask as a person. Simon Sinek is famous for saying we start with why, and that's important.
Yeah, I love Simon.
Oh, man, it's genius. But then I hear this FBI negotiator, he's Chris Voss, I think his name is. Brilliant. He's got a podcast called The Black Swan Group. He's legendary. He's on Oprah. I mean, he's a big deal. He says, your why is not fully developed until it becomes a how.
Oh, there it is. So literally on the piece of paper, I've got the how, because we talk about that a lot. Yes.
That's it. So a guy will come to me and say, man, I want to love Jesus. Cool. How? What's your plan for that? And they always freeze.
Yes.
And that lets me know the why is not deep enough yet.
Dude, it's the same. So here's where I'm at. All right. Because this is something I've been studying, thinking about for years now. As a man of faith, it's also a man that's out there cutting it up, tearing it up in the business world.
Yeah.
I start as studying successful folks. A lot of them, they say certain things like get up early. A lot of like The Rock says he gets up at 4 a.m.
Right.
And for it to get his time and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of people talk about meditation. What's the difference between meditation and prayer when it comes to just the results of what you're seeking?
Yeah, for sure. So actually, what's important to start with is the Scripture commends meditation all the time. It says, when I'm laying on my bed at night, Lord, I meditate on your word. Like I hide it in there and I just chew on it. That's kind of
what I was leading to, is like, no matter what is your religious choices, or whatever it is, like nobody can really argue like the lessons that you learn through Christianity are like the same. Like they just call them something different. They're just labeling it different in the secular world than what they're doing. And that's when I figured that out, it was like, first of all, that's something people need to understand and realize and know. But like, it's the same stuff.
Yeah. The difference I would distinguish, just as an important difference, is so like let's use our wives as an example. When I converse with her one-to-one, like I did last night around a dinner table, I would call that a physical example of what prayer would be. It's when I'm actually talking to the author, right? I'm talking to the founder. And so it's a conversant where I'm expressing my heart to him. And then Mother Teresa would say the most important part of prayer is shutting up so you can listen. Not just like praying through my list, but then waiting like on the Holy Spirit, which has been a weird thing because people have made it weird. The Lord's not usually weird, it's usually us. But regardless, just saying, Lord, I'm listening, being still. But then meditating, to use the wife example, would be after dinner, she said something that caught me or made an impression on me. And meditating is what I'm doing in my truck the next day when I'm still thinking about what she said. And working out how it should affect my life and how it should, its ode a response. And sometimes that's just me thinking about how awesome she is. You know what I'm saying? That's meditating too. So it doesn't have to have an end, but that's definitely a difference. Whereas prayer is me speaking or listening. Meditating is me chewing the cud later.
There you go.
Going, man, I got to bring this back up. There's so much here, you know?
It's I've been just blown away at the similarities between, because, I've been called as somebody that's coached a lot of businesses. I've been labeled the guru, like, like a lot of those guys are. And one of the first questions that I ask a young business owner or a small business that comes to me when I'm talking to the people in charge is they're seeking counsel. And the first person the first question I ask is like, do you have a pastor? Have you asked them the same question? Because that was who I always went to. Even in business, I had Roger Patton was the one for the most for a long time. That like that dude was an unbelievable mentor to me, and I went to him with just real world stuff, work stuff, business stuff, and got more out of those conversations, more from a mentor perspective than anything else. Now, obviously, I'm not blind to the other side, to the people that are successful, that have great outlets. Like you can get so much out of YouTube and social media outlets, stuff like that. Like I learned so much, but like when you sit there and you look at them side by side, you're like, man, they're kind of saying the same thing at the end of the day, at least just with human habit. With how you spend your time. Maybe it's not, you what you alluded to a minute ago, with the differences is 100% fact. But at the end of the day, it's a person by themselves. Right? Working on something. And quiet.
And you'd have guys like Gary Vaynerchuk, who is far from a still individual. He's very hyped and very going all the time. But he would say things that I think are important. So obviously my position is I adore Jesus for lots of reasons.
Thank you.
Mostly because I didn't die, and he legit kept me from killing myself. Long story there, and I don't mean for that to be weird, but I have a sincere faith and relationship with him. Whereas Gary would not say he has a sincere faith at all, but he does say often the key to success is being grateful and taking time to observe it. He says it all the time, and he doesn't owe that to a deity. I don't know that he's a man of faith at all. In fact, he cusses like it's a big joke, in his world. He's like, I'd hate that I have to have an edited version of, but he will say over and over again, the reason you're not successful is you're not grateful for what you have. So when you go out to work, you can't. You're doing it to try to be satisfied, and it's never going to fill you. And I'm like, Bro, that's the gospel. Like,
Yeah, I know.
You know what
That's exactly my point. Yeah.
It's so close. We just, in my mind, that's just where we just connect it.
I think that's the difference between the theology versus the being able to the practical side of things.
Yeah.
Is I say that a lot. I'm not young anymore, but 10 years ago I was, and and that's not that long ago. But we used to talk about that. There was somebody made a statement about the school systems. They talked about how 100 years ago what New York City looked like with the carriages and horses versus cars, and where airplanes were 100 years ago, and how far they've come now. And then they showed this is school 100 years ago.
Yeah.
This is school now. They said this is church 100 years ago.
Yeah.
This is church now. And they were almost identical.
Yeah.
They didn't evolve.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the theology gets it's I struggled with that for most of my teenage and 20s. Is I'd go and I'd hear the theological stance on it, and I had no idea how to apply what I just heard.
Yeah. First
of all, to even truly understand it.
Yeah.
But how to apply it to my life today.
Yeah. Yeah. I often think, I am fond of saying this to people all the time. I was raised around, my dad was a jokester. He loved to tell jokes. And he had a whole reel of jokes that would start with you showing up at the gate of heaven and asking St. Peter a question, right? I don't know why, but regardless. So I just riff off that and say, hey, if there really is this moment where you get to the gate and Peter says, why should I let you in? Mm-hmm. The theological answer is because the Lord has received Christ's sacrifice on your behalf as payment for your sin. But the question that Jesus poses in Matthew chapter 25 is, if there's a one-question test, the question is, do you love me? The problem is you have to answer it now, not then. Right. And you answer it by how you live. And he says to love me is just like loving your neighbor. It's not the same, but it's just like it. Mm-hmm. So much so that he goes to unpack that scripture to say, if you haven't loved your neighbor well, who you can see, how can you lie and say that you would love God who you can't see? Yes. You can't. So to the degree that you've loved your neighbor, that passage continues to unpack like, you have loved me well. Mm. And in fact, I was your neighbor. And so they're not other, because the Hebrew, it's really important that we know our Jewish roots, but the whole point is that we are created in the image of God. We are unique expressions of an unfathomable being. And so I need to know Nick, because Nick has something to teach me, not only for my good and for joy, but also about the Lord that I'm not going to learn through anybody else. And what I see in a guy like, Gary Vee, who we mentioned a minute ago, man, I see the Lord all over him. Yeah. I want him to know Jesus, because ultimately that's the source of my joy. And it's kind of like the revealing of why I got joy out of all these other things. Oh, that's right, you love me, So it to me, that I think that's key is I don't want a person to check boxes. I don't want them to do these things for themselves. Meaning, I don't want them to get up early as if that were a brownie badge, right? Mm-hmm. What I want them ultimately to do is fall in love with Jesus, and then ask the question, how am I going to love him well today? Man, I can't lead anybody I outsleep. I got to get up before my family. Mm-hmm. Why? Because I can't lead people in a plan I don't have.
That's awesome.
And I got to go get the plan from, the Lord. So I would say this too. I think this is something else you brought up a minute ago. I'm going to get the guy wrong, so I'm not going to say who it was. A lot of things get attributed to St. Patrick because of the whole snake thing, but it might have been him or Boniface. But I think, and I wasn't raised Catholic. I've learned all these things later in life. But I want to say St. Patrick. Anyway, he comes up to a group of people worshiping a tree, and he uses the tree to say it is right that the tree would evoke your worship. It's just not the tree you ought to worship. It's the one who made it, whose glory is being revealed in its greatness. Mm-hmm. And so it was just a click. He took what they were already worshiping and already enamored with to say, yes, it is magnificent, isn't it? We need to just one click. It's not the tree. It's that the tree's revealing the glory of God. And so we can now have a greater appreciation for the tree without deitizing it.
Yeah.
By worshiping the one who made it. And so in the same way, whether it's money or finance or sex or power or family or chocolate chip cookies or baseball, I go, man, these things, the whole earth, the scripture says, is full of the glory of God. So I want to use those things to help people taste and see, man, this is great. And then just move them that one click to go, it's not the money that's great. It's the Lord.
That's right.
Who's generous with those who serve him and love him, and look at all he's afforded you. Man, now I can enjoy my wealth without worshiping it.
That's awesome.
Now I can enjoy my leverage and my influence without worshiping it, without being in fear that I'll lose it, because it wasn't the influence, it was the one who gave it to me. Anyway.
Dude, you said a little while ago, and first of all, like you mentioned Simon Sinek, who I love. We say it a lot around here talking about leadership, that you can't be a great leader until you've been a great follower.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And literally we reference, I'm like, Jesus had apostles who were followers,
right.
who he sent out
Yes.
to be leaders.
Yeah.
Right? There's literally, again, everything that you hear, it's right there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
It's so, but you mentioned that you said that you ran from the church and you ran from Jesus. All right.
Yeah.
So people run. Like
we
call in the business world, we call it the valley of despair. So it's uninformed optimism at first, right? And then it's informed pessimism in the beginning, right? And then they're in the valley of despair, and then it's like well, then while they're realizing, holy crap, this is way harder than I thought. Maybe I can't do this. Maybe this isn't for me. Then the next shiny object comes along, and it's the same thing. Oh, it's uninformed optimism, and they just keep making that same circle back into the valley of despair.
It's so good.
So first of all, nobody is undefeated here, right?
Yeah.
So nobody's undefeated. So
that's right.
We're all gonna get knocked down, get punched, get beat up in every way you can think of, financially, emotionally, physically, everything.
Yeah.
And it's natural to want to run. Leaders, I have something you said before we started recording, leaders get wounded.
Yeah.
Right? So, all right, so let's talk about you running from church and running from Jesus, what you learned. How, so, it's okay to have fear. Like Rocky Balboa says, fear is your best friend.
For sure.
Frankie Fear, as he always called it. Because that fear is a way that you can have the most educated offense.
Yeah.
Right? So running from church, running from Jesus.
Yeah.
What were you running from, really?
Yeah. I was running.
And why?
Yeah. Yeah. Part of the way that my meltdown happened, I was in a very legalistic, military-like version of the Christian faith, of fundamentalism, and a lot of people have talked about it. I adore those people, but there were some things that I certainly wouldn't agree with. So what happened was I was at a university, and in the scope of this, I broke a very small but meaningful rule. To not get into the details, it was something that you would certainly laugh at now, but what happened was it became an alignment issue where they were afraid that as kind of the person they put out on tour to represent them as a university, because that's how I was there on a scholarship, they were afraid that people would associate what I had done, however small, with them, and it would ruin their image or cause them problems. And so they stripped my scholarship and all this. Now I could still come back to school, but of course I left at that point for shame. Mm-hmm. So what happened to me was that it removed my identity.
Okay.
I was a singer. I was a successful musician. I was the person, quite frankly, who I'd been pursuing, who I'd wanted to become, and suddenly somebody took that away from me. So when I suddenly wasn't able to do the thing I had done, I didn't know who I was. And I began to run from that, but you can't run from something without running to something else.
Oh, hold up.
And so by necessity, to run from one direction is to run in another. The problem is that there's nothing over there that's not over here.
Yeah, man. The grass ain't greener, is it?
That's it. No.
It's green where you water it.
It's green where you water it.
That's right.
And so I began to say, who the freak am I? Mm-hmm. That's as close as I'll come to cussing.
There you go. You did good, dude. That was powerful.
I don't drop those bombs anyway, but unless I hit my lawn season will cause me to cuss. But regardless, I ran to relationships. I ran to food was a thing for me. I was not an alcohol guy. So I got up just $1 shy of 250 and ended up, addicted to pornography and all kinds of relationships when that ran out. Porn was just the Christian version of what we now call college. But it was a safer alternative that eventually, caused all kinds of problems. I actually ended up I had a nervous breakdown. I ended up in a psychiatric evaluation with a doctor and everything. He said, Bledsoe, he didn't call me Bledsoe. He didn't know me, but he said, sir, you actually, my official diagnosis is cognitive dissonance, which is actually a strong tool for success, but at the time it was being played against me. He said, the way you live and the things that I think you sincerely believe don't align. Mm-hmm. He said, I believe you actually have a sincere faith, but the little you've told me about the way that you're acting and the actions you're taking don't align with even the little bit I know about the Christian faith.
Thank you. Oh my gosh.
He said, so your problem is you're not living the way you believe. You either have to change your beliefs or change your actions. And he said, I don't think historically there's precedent that you can actually change the way you believe. He goes, I think you sincerely believe it. So he goes, I can give you a pill, but he said that your problem isn't chemical. You need to get with a community, which we would call a team, right, of people to help you flesh out the things you actually believe on Monday morning.
So, first of all, we all have addictions of some sort, whether they're good, bad, right? We're addicted to stuff. Mm-hmm. But we're also all faced with an identity crisis at some point in time.
Absolutely.
And I've never really thought about it that way, how the crisis is really your actions leading to the addictions. You're addicted to the wrong things when you're having a crisis, because who you believe you are is not actually who you're being, right? Yep. And I know, I struggled with that for a long time, for probably like 10, 15 years, especially after becoming, no longer being a baseball player.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Because for 20-something years, that was it, and I didn't know what the heck. I didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
I didn't know who I was, and it took me a while. And I've struggled with some of those strange addictions. Ironically, I've never been addicted to any type of drug or alcohol. Mm-hmm. I can. When I play golf, and back then when I was on the baseball field, there was always a little bit of chewing tobacco in my cheek. That was just my granddad. That was something he gave me.
Yeah.
When Mom, Dad, sorry, I don't know if you guys knew that. That was something that he gave me, and I enjoyed it. But it was something that I only did on if I don't play golf this year, I won't have one. You know what I mean? If I wasn't playing on so I was never addicted to it. It was I had cigarettes, but I would only have cigarettes back in my 20s if I was in the bar.
In the bar, yeah.
And you know what I'm saying? I never craved it outside.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say I was addicted to it. I was more of a creature of habit than addictions. Mm-hmm. And I became addicted to the habits though.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's just they're just more socially acceptable. Mm-hmm. I can take you to 100 men right now that are addicted to work, and they're addicted because not only do they love success, but they're afraid to go home because they don't know who they are at home, because they have no idea how to be honest with their family and their kids. They don't know who, so when they get home, they abdicate their responsibility to, I just really like sports, so I'm going to sit here in front of this. Well, that's fine, but that's not leadership in the home, and that's not knowing who you are in that position. It's like with baseball. We put players in positions based on their innate skills and abilities. If you suddenly move a right fielder and ask him to play catcher, forget it.
Yeah.
That guy, not only is his knees going to he's just not designed for that, but his awareness of the game and what's happening. He only views the game from right field.
That's right.
He's meant to throw home hard and catch balls. That's it. And he probably has a big stick. That's the whole idea. So you put that same guy on first base, he might succeed, but you put him on third, I don't know. He might not be fast enough. So we're setting him up for failure, but also it comes down with training. You have to, train for your position.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys weren't trained
That's right.
how to be home. And then you've got, this image of what they're trying to lead up to. And so you get addicted to things like work. You want to be in a place where you feel strong and you feel successful. So whether it's a golf course or, drugs and alcohol or whatever.
So here at Team Hyder, since 2016, we've had an unbelievable platform to take people that feel like they know who they are and what they're worth, and they've just never really had the outlet to do that, to be that, right?
Yeah.
And we've been able to be that outlet for a few hundred people, and it's been amazing and life-changing. They all, including myself, when I started, struggled with the same things. All of us had identity crisis. All of us were, we had to take our leadership to the next level. We had to learn to accept responsibility for everything, meaning like instead of saying, it's not my fault because I'm pointing out, I'm learned to take that finger and point it back at me and say it's everything's my fault, because that's the only way I can have control to fix it. This is kind of like, I want to get into a lot about the Take the Hill, the 8-step framework you have, the battle plan, all that kind of stuff, because this is why.
Yeah.
So Take the Hill exists because you had to take the hill. I had to take the hill.
That's it.
So many people, everybody actually has to take the hill, just so few don't.
That's right.
So if you don't, and they don't because they really don't know who they are, or they have a crisis. Their actions are not, like everybody that walks in here that I interview, they all say, Nick, I just want to make 6 figures.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, do you? Anybody can say it.
Yeah, that's right.
Just showing up here, that's not going to get you 6 figures. It's what you do when you get here. Like, there's no participation trophies
right.
here. If I was going to pay somebody just to show up, I'd be paying my son.
Yeah.
Or I got a Yorkie at home. He could probably show up too. But it's what you do when you get here.
That's right.
So,
and to me, I think that that's the biggest obstacle I see to people being successful, is that they know what they don't want. And then they just throw up a quick goal like $100,000, but that's not personal. That's not a story. That's not inviting themselves into a vision for who they actually want to be. They just want $100,000, so they don't have to worry about paying their bills anymore. And they think that would be enough to live the lifestyle they want. But ultimately, I find the biggest obstacle is people don't have a vision.
So, dude, you were so spot on with that, because, like, I heard my man Bradley out in Vegas. He talks a lot about. He's like, you say you want a big house. Well, big house is nothing, because big is reference and it's different to everybody. Right. So which big house? But you can't just stop there. Where's the couch that you're going to sit on? When you watch your television, what color is the walls? If you want a jet, like seriously, what logo is going to be on the seats? You have to visualize specifically exactly what it is, and in like. So now, why did Jesus come back here again?
Yeah.
What didn't we have? So like being able to visualize who it is that we need to be or what we need to strive for.
Yeah.
We literally were given the example.
Yeah. Yeah. And I start with, in the why for that for me is, I don't want you to tell me, like, if we're just having fun going to buy a new Jeep, you and I both love Jeeps.
Yes.
That's one thing. But really, what I know about Jeep owners is it's just an expression of who we want to be.
Yeah.
If you drive a Jeep, I know a whole lot about you. Mm-hmm. Why? Because I know it about me.
Yes.
I know how you view yourself. When I leave this studio, I'm going straight to the river with my son. We're catching trout.
That's awesome.
Why? Because I'm an outdoorsman. Mm-hmm. Not because I say I want to be an outdoorsman and I buy Orvis clothes, but because I actually go to the river. Mm-hmm. I hunt things. Mm-hmm. But it's because my grandfather was that way, and I wanted to be like him.
Yep.
And I wanted to be a frontiersman, and I always held that up as an example of what a real man would look like. And so in my brain, if I could catch catfish and I could, be probably a trophy hunter in my mind, but I wear a cowboy hat, in the summer, like I'm just that guy. Mm-hmm. I like motorcycles and I like Jeeps, and I'm all testosterone. So but not because I have this bravado, but because I just love it. Yeah. And the men in my life who I wanted to be like did those things. And so when you ask me why do I want to drive a Jeep, it's not like, I want, this seats or that. It's because I want to be a guy that lives outdoors and loves the top down. Why? Because that's fun, man. Like, yes. There's a bigger why. Like, I don't care what kind of house you want. Who do you want to be? And that's what we started at with Take the Hill. Like, what is your vision? But not because you want that.
Yeah.
Because if you just want that, somebody else probably told you that was cool.
That's right.
So you just want to be cool. Well, that's terrible.
Right.
Like, that is not a helpful place to be.
That's right.
Because you can be cool and have all that crap, and I'm going to tell you, you're going to be strung out. You're going to lose your wife, and you're popping pills and living in an office. By the time you're 50, you're going to be lousy because you got the things, but you didn't know why.
Yeah.
So what do you believe? Like, what do you actually what are you believing about that Jeep? What are you believing about that house? What do you like? Why do you actually want those things? And for me, the framework for me, faith is not a box on a grid. It's the grid, and everything else is within that box. And so, to me, the operating system is my faith, and I would say that's true of anybody. For me, it happens to be Jesus. For them, it may be that all that glitters is what I'm after. You know what I mean? They may have a different metric, but either way, they have a system of belief.
There it is. That
leads what they're doing. And so I really want to unpack that and say, okay, what is that operating system? And within that context, let me help you. Again, for me, that the drive is towards Christ. So I want to help you experience that life lived his way is better than the way you are, because you can have, I have to be careful how I say this. You can have your cake and eat it too, in the sense of you can have that Jeep and also be satisfied in it, because you're not satisfied in the Jeep, you're satisfied in Christ. And so how do I help people, do that? What happens though is they'll end up in a place where they come to faith, but they think it's a thing to believe, or they leave it on Sunday and there's no integration. So for me, that was part of my problem. I had this faith system, but it wasn't affecting Monday morning. So it didn't help me be a better insurance salesman. It didn't help me be a better father. It didn't help me be a better whatever, an artist, songwriter. And so trying to integrate those things, if you just show up and you say, like you say, I want to make $100,000, you're just going to be miserable, because you're going to get $100,000 and then go, now what?
Yeah, why 100? Like, what's that going to do? What are you going to do with it? How's that going to help you? What does that do for your family? You know? All right, so
that was a tangent. Sorry, I
love them.
Resonates with me.
I love them. So taking the hill, there's a battle plan.
Yeah,
there's a battle plan. There's 8 steps.
Yeah, we teach a framework.
Okay,
we call it the battle plan, and it's taken right out of Scripture. There's actually several places, but the most articulate is 2 Peter chapter 1. And I want to say too, for the audience, like, this is not just a Jesus thing. It's the way that we believe that he set up all things, and that anybody can kind of sample it. Like, there's no mystery to it. And what I'm going to say is, you're going to be like, that doesn't sound like church at all. But it's right there in the text. It's written by Peter, who arguably is one of the 3 closest people to Christ in his earthly life, right? Peter and the Apostle John and his brother James. Regardless, Peter gets to the end of his life, and he writes this letter to his friends. And he says, since all of this is true about the love of God and the fact that he's given us all that we need, with that in mind, your faith intact, he said, it's important then, brothers, that you make every effort to add to your faith these 8 things. And faith is the first one.
Okay.
It starts with what do we believe?
I'm taking some notes.
Yeah. He says, make every effort to add these things. And they're not only qualities. He lists them as qualities, but they are literally a path. And this is how it works. He says, add faith. But to your faith, you have to add moral excellence or virtue.
So that's number 2.
Yeah, number 2.
Virtue, moral excellence.
Virtue, moral excellence. I just call those best practices. I learned that word actually from my insurance manager years ago. He said, hey, we'll fine-tune you later. Right now, I just need you to do the things we already know turn out like success. So show up, make this amount of calls, make this, and if you're making the calls, then later we can fine-tune whether or not you're doing it well.
Yeah.
But until we have the math, until you're just doing it, we don't know what we need to fine-tune.
Ride the bike. Did you fall or not? I don't know.
You may be great all the way to the close, and you can't close.
Yeah.
We'll teach you to close. But right now, just align yourself with the best practices.
There you go.
So when I meet a person, this is both a faith thing, but it's also, we call them mountains of maturity, right? Like, so in your career, in your marriage, in your fitness, in your intellect, like how are you pursuing education and those sorts of things. Like Zig Ziglar was a big fan of calling, Ziglar, right? So these 7 areas. And so you can apply this to anything. So I start with faith in the big picture of like, what do you believe is true, like about the Lord and your ethos system, and then aligning yourself morally with those things. And I tell people to go to bed with their wife, wake up, I tell them to go to bed early with their wife, wake up before she does, get a cup of coffee, open the text, spend time with the Lord in prayer, and then get out their calendar and figure out when they're going to do what they just read, like how they can implement that in their life. I teach them to exercise. I teach them to put their phone on the counter when they get home. They don't have to turn it off. Just don't put it in your pocket. And then so they can look their kids in the eye and be fully present. And then I tell them to worship each week. and get around the community of faith so they're not alone. That's a handful of things. Those would fall under like moral excellence. But if you, this same thing applies to a person who wants to come work with you, and they show up at Team Hider, and you say, hey, let me show you the practices that we do to be successful at Team Hider. It starts with what you believe about yourself. Who do you want to become? What do you believe is possible? Like you're working on that, right? Sowing that vision into their head all the time. But the very next thing is they got to show up on time. They got to have a lead list. You know what I'm saying? Like there's best practices that you would teach them. That's just number 2. I call that, it's like triage. It's just, man, if you're not doing the basics, don't complain to me about not getting the results. We can fine tune you later, but in the beginning, we're going to do that. So step 3, I know I took a second on step 2, but step 2 is usually where people have failed. They usually didn't move from what they believe to action.
Right.
And so that's just a basic action. Step 3 is knowledge, it says. Add to your faith, moral excellence. And number 3 is knowledge. You need new information because your old operating system is broken. So we got to get new information. And that usually comes from a wise guide who's been there before. You can't just go, you can find information anywhere, but how do you know it's successful? You got to find a guide like yourself who's already done this, and you can start implementing that. They don't have to have your skills. They don't have to be exactly like you. They just have to be close enough to give you a wise opinion to help you. The 4th thing it says you got to add after you get knowledge is self-control, which incidentally, I am fond of telling my Christian friends, does not mean being led by the Spirit. It means self-control. Right. One of the fruits of the Spirit, the text tells us, is the ability to control ourselves. So like, hey, you can learn you have to stop eating these foods, but you actually have to stop eating them.
Right.
And that comes down to not dialing the phone to order the pizza. Can you control yourself? And in our home, we teach that the Lord is giving us the desire to do that thing, so we access it. So self-control. The 4th thing, where are we at? 4 or 5? I guess 5. Is steadfastness. It means hold it. It's steady. Hold the line, you know, they would say. It's the difference between self-control and steadfastness is suffering. Steadfastness is where a yoga teacher says, find the place of pain and determine not to move. Self-control is finding the place of pain. Determining not to move is steadiness. It's when you want to shake and you want to quit and you want to run like crazy, but you don't.
That's awesome.
That's where the learning actually happens.
Yep.
You thought you learned with knowledge, and most people, and including myself, for years I was satisfied with the information. I never had to go to self-control, and I sure as heck wasn't going to steadiness. But steadiness is where you actually take information and make it understanding. It's where knowledge becomes wisdom. And the next step is godliness, he lists after steadfastness. Godliness is when you've held it so long and had self-control through steadiness that you arrive at the mind of the teacher. And you are like
Wow, that's awesome. Yes, sir.
You are like them. So in the beginning, you have somebody coming here working for Team Hider, and they're like, just tell me what to do. I don't know what to freaking do. But eventually, after they've used self-control to do it, and they've worked it out through steadfastness, eventually they go, I totally know why he asked me to do this now. Why? Because it achieves this result, and it does it this way, and it avoids these problems. And they can begin to intuit what you would say. So I've been my father's son for 44 years. You could come up and ask me, what does your dad think about this? And I could be pretty close to right 90% of the time. I may not know the specifics, but I know his heart because I lived with him so long and I walked in his way so long that I'm pretty sure I know what he'd say. That's godliness. Godliness literally means godlikeness.
Yep.
But in any context, it's when you have the mind of the teacher and you begin to understand, Miyagi in that sense. You're not just waxing on, waxing off. Suddenly you have this revelation through discipline where it's like, oh, now I get it.
That's right.
So the next step after that, he lists after godliness, is brotherly affection. And that literally means a love for the brethren. In the Christian context, that would mean when you want the people of God to come to know the heart of God that you have just understood. And so it's when you're to use fitness as an example, when you have lost the weight and you have felt the feeling of shedding it, and you're suddenly now healthy and your skin is glowing and you're like, guys, I have experienced change. It's when that overflows into joy and you realize there are other people you love who are close to you that need this too. And you begin to open up your mouth and say, man, I want to help you now come on this journey. And the last step, he says, is when you move from brotherly affection to love, which love, Jesus says we even love our enemies. It's when you've realized this is such a revelation and such a transformation. You don't just want it for the people you would call bro, people that you're close to. You want everybody to understand this thing because it is of such, monument that you're like, you are a total stranger, and I'm telling you, I can change your life. You got to know about this thing. Again, applied in any context, that's what causes people to want to be teachers when they're like, man, yoga saved my life. Cool. I'm going to go be a yogi and eventually open a studio. You get all the way there. It's what happens with Dave Ramsey's followers. He's masterful at helping people experience actual change that they can point to on a spreadsheet. And they get so high about it, they want to get on a show and tell about it, but they're out selling his books for him.
That's right.
Why? Because they did it so long. Now they understand the wisdom of it.
Yeah.
They're his pastors, if you will. They're like making converts all over the place.
They're the disciples, aren't they?
Disciples, that's it. So that's the path of discipleship. It's not a mystery. It's right there. So,
God, first of all, hold on, folks. Just for about the last probably 10 minutes, you're welcome. Okay, that was awesome, dude. You have no idea how you just described. So you just described the journey of every single person.
Every single person
that we've helped and worked with and everything to a T.
Yeah.
And it's they could even look at, number one is faith. Even if they just had to say, do I have faith in myself that I can do this, right?
Yeah.
Do I have the moral excellence to do that? Am I seeking the knowledge to do that? Do I have self-control? It's unbelievable. Obviously what we mentioned, the valley of despair a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
Well, once you get past the valley of despair, that's basically the number 5 for you with steadfastness and the suffering.
That's it.
Right?
Yeah.
And then boom, the next place is then it's, you figured out you can do it, and now you're just actually doing it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you're exactly right. The valley of despair, when you were talking about that, I was like, that's the difference between self-control and steadfastness.
There you go.
They quit between those steps because it's when you realize this is actually not fun.
I knew this one was going to be really good for you. Yeah, that's right. This is awesome.
People often ask me what steadfastness is because it sounds awesome. It's like
it sounds like an old word.
Yeah, it's like hold the line. Hold.
Yeah.
That's my favorite scene is in Braveheart.
Yeah.
The Brits are pressing down on the Scots. And he has just given them this pep talk. They're freaking ready. Let's go kill them. And he tells them not to move. Mm-hmm. He says, hold the line. And he has to say it 4 times. And he gets louder, and the horse's feet get louder. And you see the eyes of the Scots get big, boss, are you sure?
Yeah.
And he's like, hold the line. Don't move. And they're waiting. And the horse, and they're like, are you sure?
Yeah.
It's suffering.
That's right.
Is what steadfastness is. It's not the sexy part. It sounds like, I'm steady. No, you can suffer well.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing. It's not pretty. You know this as a person who's done it.
So the suffering's fear a lot.
Oh my
gosh.
gosh.
It's just fear.
Yeah, it's where you face it.
Yes.
No, I am afraid. I'm not doubting that. I'm not demeaning it. I tell my daughter all the time, honey, I know you're afraid. She'll be like, I'm afraid of something. This comes up a lot. I go, honey, I know. I'm not asking you to discard it or not be afraid. I'm asking you to walk at it.
There you go. Fantastic.
I am not. You should be afraid. You still must do it. Mm-hmm. So it's my job to equip you. And she always says this. She goes, but Daddy, how? Yes, that's the question. How? Now we'll go get a plan. Then we'll try, fail, reassess, generation cycle stuff.
I've got notes here when we talk about why versus how, getting a plan. Well, then the very next thing we talk about is the importance of a team.
Yeah.
All right. So why is a team important in a journey like this?
Oh, man. For 1,000 reasons. On a functional...
You can list all 1,000 if you want.
On a theological level, if you can do it alone, it's not Christianity. That is a team sport. The team is actually the thing I resisted the longest. Because...
Me too.
And I still struggle with it.
Yes.
I have this fantastic story that shames me about Betsy. Betsy is...
You have an amazing team at home, by the way.
Oh my God.
And so do I, and that's why I don't understand why I struggle with it. How big of a fool am I?
There's this false narrative that every man is an island and that a strong man stands alone. It's just not true. It's just not. So I had this really funny story where we were landlords, Betsy and I, for a season before we decided to move back to that house. But regardless, we were living 40 minutes across town. We started to help build a school up, and we're really excited about that. That season was ending. Regardless, I had to drive across town 40 minutes to mow the lawn. When I got to...
That was a fun trip.
Oh, my gosh. It was so dumb. I hired that mess out quick. So what happens is I get to the house where the tractor is and a zero-turn deal, and the wheel has gone flat. But it's flat enough, and I have fixed it enough, that you can't do it without a high-pressure pancake air compressor. You can't do it with like a bike pump. You need... It's a hot mess. You got to ratchet strap it and all this stuff and use a big burst of air to seat it. Well, that's a tool that costs $100+. Mm-hmm. And so I get there and I say to myself, I am cussing at this point. That's one thing that might me do it. I call my wife and say, doggone it. The mower's down. It's the one little window I had the next 2 weeks to do this. I'm going to be back home to get the air compressor and then drive back. Or I got to go to Lowe's right now and spend $100 on this thing. What do you think? And she is like, Bledsoe, you are so foolish and stubborn. Our neighbor has an air compressor. Never mind, he's retired and he's your friend. He would love to have an opportunity to help you out. Don't be a fool. Go next door and say, I need your help. And he will say, I can't wait. And in 3 minutes, you'll have an air compressor. You won't be out $100. He'll feel encouraged. You'll feel encouraged. Everybody will be better, except your pride is in the way from recruiting help. I literally was like, well, that's why you need a team.
Yes.
Like, not only because I needed my neighbor, but I needed my wife to say, you're an idiot.
You need a book just about that.
Yeah.
Like, for real. How many road trips were messed up because the guy wouldn't get the help? And as a matter of fact, Josh told a story about that in church on Sunday where he was like, we drove 8 hours out of the way, and it was because it was me and my buddies on this guy's trip. We're just like, should we? Nah, we got it. We'll figure it out. Like, you know, and then when they did finally ask for help, it was like that scene in Tommy Boy when he was like, you need a new map.
Yeah.
Because you're in the wrong state.
Yeah. I think that one of the reasons I resist a team from my history personally is that I saw my dad get hurt. Okay. And he's masterful. He's so strong. He also had, and he would tell you this, I'm not talking bad about my father. He used to use this old word. So my grandfather was a Choctaw Indian who about had his life taken on a reservation, had to run away. Mm-hmm. Ends up in the plains of Illinois, meets an Irish woman, gets married and has 12 kids. My dad's number 5 or 6 in that lineup. And so they had a real... they would say, we don't want to be beholden to anyone, meaning we don't want to be indebted to anyone. But what happens is when you take on that complex, you don't allow team in your life because you're intentionally trying to protect your pride or fear or whatever it is. And so I grew up in we'll just do it ourselves. We'll just do it ourselves. And so that's one of the reasons I had to. But then later in life when he got real successful in business, he had to have a team. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And so for me, I think I avoided it for a long time. And part of what I think people resist, like, you know, you grow up in school and you get put up on a team. Well, if you're driven, it means you did all the work for the project and nobody else contributed. But that's not what a healthy team is like. Right. A healthy team is when everybody has a plan or a position. Everybody is in the right seat on the bus.
They got to roll, yeah.
And we all want the same touchdown or we all want the same victory. What doesn't work is when you just have hired hands and call them a team. Yep. Those people aren't there to defend. You know, there's plenty of scriptures that talk about, you know, the shepherd of the sheep actually is invested and loves and will lay his life down for the sheep, whereas the hired servant, he runs them in at the wolves show up. You don't want a bunch of those guys.
Thank you.
You know, you got to have ownership. I talk about this all the time. The difference between owning your life and renting it. You know, like my renters, some of them treated it like their property and were very kind to it. Others, it was just a place to stay. Right. Oh my gosh. So if you show up and this is just a place for you to work, we're not going to get along.
Thank you.
You know.
That's right.
Because your vision has to be aligned with my vision. That's why we have to start with the why and the faith piece. What do you believe about yourself, and what do you believe about us in the role of your story? and how do those things align?
Yep.
And how can I call you back to that? Because that's what the team does, guys.
Yep.
You know,
We talk about that a lot here. How the greatest tool you got, your team, and the greatest tool the team has is you. Right? You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
Fantastic. I'm gonna give myself another one. Right?
Come on.
So once you got your team, you got to lead yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And so when every day before I even roll out of the bed, the calendar stays so crazy, which we're blessed for that to happen. That's what we want. The calendar stays so crazy that before I go to bed at night, one of the last things I do is make sure I know where I got to be first. And then that lets me know, obviously, the baby's eating food. I love feeding her breakfast every morning, getting Ethan ready to school, and to school, and all those things. But I ask myself, I've categorized myself into four things that I have to figure out what my purpose is for that day. Number one is what's my purpose today to be a good Christian man, right?
Yeah.
Number two is how am I going to be a good husband today? What's my purpose for that today?
Yeah.
Number three is how am I going to be a good father? What's my purpose for being that? And then number four, how am I going to go out and be a good businessman, a good leader in the community, right? So literally, I ask myself all four of those things. What is my purpose for today? We're taught. I went to school just because they told me when and where to be there, but they didn't really tell me why I was going or what I was going to accomplish from that day.
Oh my goodness!
Most people go to church on Sunday because it's what they do on Sundays.
That's right.
Not for the reason that they went the first time. They lost that already, right? Mm-hmm. So every single day, we say on Ethan's baseball team, we talk about everything has to be on purpose, but with a purpose. Mm-hmm. Right? It's not just on purpose; it's got to have a purpose too. Mm-hmm. So all four of those things, that's the first thing I do every day before my feet even swing out and hit the floor.
Yep.
Is I got to ask myself, and I have a little note where I take some notes, and it's like, these are the things that I got to get done today in those four categories, right? So going back to what we were talking about a minute ago, leading yourself, what am I doing today is the question that I got with that, right?
That's it.
So what's that process look like for you, and what are you teaching?
Yeah, for sure. So we cover the 6 questions, right, of school, right? The who, what, when, where, why, and how.
Yep.
And I teach them in a certain order, right? We do have to start with why, but then we have to ask ourselves, who do I want to become? What is that vision? And then we just go right through those questions. How am I going to do that then?
Yeah.
What is that going to look like? Let's say a person wants to be a successful professional. The question they might ask, that's their who. Their why is before that, their who. They ultimately want to. They may want to be a successful professional, but then it's like, well, how? You can do that a lot of places.
Yeah. You
know what I'm saying? Cool, with Team Hyder. All right, so I'm going to go here. So then we have to ask, and that answers where. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go to the office every day.
Yep.
But ultimately, what am I going to do? So I just...
and it's taking you somewhere.
Yes.
Like everybody uses a GPS these days.
Yes.
The GPS only works if you type in the final destination.
Yeah.
And then,
if you're honest about where you are,
that's right. If you're honest about where you are,
that's
man, that's a big one. I'm gonna be using that a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
So something we have in common, baseball. I just did my wife and I premarital counseling for 8 to 10 weeks with one of the Philadelphia Phillies.
Okay.
He got drafted this year. His name's Ethan Wilson. Phenomenal kid. I think he went 49. I say kid. He's a grown man. 49, I think, in the draft. Wonderful guy.
If you're still playing sports for a living, you're playing a kid's game.
Okay.
You're a kid, right? You're blessed to still be a kid.
He gets paid to swing a bat.
It's
right. Wonderful. So he and I were texting this morning, actually, when Henry just got his new baseball cleats. So shout out to you, Ethan, if you're out there. He and Hallie just got married, and in the counseling I do this, I say, hey, tell me your story before you met. And so we spend 1 week just talking about who they were before they met each other. Week 2, we talk about their love story, how they got to where they are now, from when they met to where they are, and why they want to get married to each other. And we talk about why this one, why not somebody else. And then in the third session, I say, now cool, I want you to sit. Week 3, their homework is go to the rocking chair, whether that's 65 or 85 to you, and write the bullet point version of the hallmarks and the things you want to be true about you when you get to that chair.
Straight up, dude.
And so they're like, we want to be married. We want it to still be hot. Heck yeah, you do. Like, he's like, can I sub out the rocking chair for a hot tub and Pinot Grigio? I'm like, heck yeah, or Pinot Noir. So when they got married, we bought him a 50th anniversary card and a bottle of Pinot.
That's awesome.
Because that's what they said they wanted in that vision. And I said, hey, while we celebrate today, this is what we're after. And so in session 4, I always ask them this. I say, cool, we know the pre-story. We know the moment you're in right now. We also know how you want this to end. What has to be true of you for the next 50 years for that scene to be a reality?
Fantastic.
What are you going to do tomorrow?
Thank you.
To help her end up in that rocking chair with you or that hot tub with you, loved. So let's start with the low-hanging fruit. You're going to have to be faithful? Mm-hmm. Yeah, you probably are. Cool. What are you going to have to, what provisions and metrics and methods of engagement are you going to have to acquire or become self-disciplined in to make sure that you're faithful? Because, brother, you're about to be a touring professional like I was. Mm-hmm. I know all about that. It's real. Let's not deny it. Let's not act like it's not. Let's not act like you're above it. Let's get a team. Let's get other people around you that can help hold up the standard to you, that can help call you. Awesome. Cool. Hallie, what's going to have to be true about you if you're going to be faithful to a man who's on the road for 163 games a year? Mm-hmm. That's real.
That's right.
How are you not going to be? And then we just work through those things. But when you take the why and the vision and you go, now what are you going to do today? So there's a really great book I would recommend to your listeners. I can't remember the name of it right now, but it's written by the CEO of Ritz-Carlton. His name is just escaped me. Horst Schulze.
You know what? The beautiful thing is we have phones on the set here, and we're going to look this up right now.
I've listened to the whole thing. Yeah, Horst Schulze. He's brilliant.
So what am I looking up here? Because I want them to know this is cool.
Yeah, Schulze, S-C-H-U-L-T-Z-E. S-C-H-U-L-T-Z. Yeah, and I can...
Let's tell them what the book is.
It's really great. And I'll have it under my audiobooks, too, while you pull it if we have enough internet.
Excellent. Because they got to check it out. Anytime we reference something, it's continuing learning, man. You got to seek the knowledge. You got to seek the information. If we're going to reference something they need, we're going to tell them exactly what it is, and they can go get it.
It's called Excellence Wins.
Excellence Wins.
By Horst, H-O-R-S-T, Schulze, S-C-H-U-L-Z-E. Excellence Wins. He is the CEO and director for all of Ritz-Carlton. Mm-hmm. And he says you have to be vision-led and mission-driven.
Vision-led, mission-driven.
So you have to know what the vision is. You have to know, and that vision, don't complicate it. What do you want to see? That's what it means.
All my followers will be seeing vision-led, mission-driven on many things.
What do you want to see in the world, in your life? He says it has to pass 4 questions. It has to, or it's not big enough.
Yep.
It has to be good for you.
Yep.
It has to be good for your customers.
Yep.
Or the people you serve. It has to be good for your shareholders. Mm-hmm. And it has to be good for the world.
So there's guiding principles in which every decision's made.
Yes. Your vision has to be good for you,
Bam.
The world, your shareholders, and the people you serve. And if it's not big enough. So he says you have to be vision-led, but then you have to be mission-driven.
Yeah.
And the difference is, what am I going to do in my role in seeing this greater vision? So the vision may be bigger than you can even fulfill.
Yeah.
But ultimately, okay, what are we going to do? We're going to sell health insurance. Why? Because we want to see people be healthy and whole.
Yeah.
And our role in that is we want to be a part of the insurance industry. But then he says that the question most people fail to ask is, what am I going to do today then to contribute to that mission to see that vision fulfilled? So, and that's the nuts and bolts, not sexy part.
Dude, every Major League team, every Major League Baseball team says they want to win the World Series, but if they don't win enough of the 162 games in the regular season, they don't get to the next level. So they got to focus. They still have to have a game plan and a strategy and a purpose to win that game coming up. Then there's then they're trying to win the series.
Yes.
And they're trying to win more than they won the month and then win their division, right? So it's awesome. All right.
And what are you going to do today? Means I'm going to go take BP.
That's right.
I'm going to go hit a ball. It's not sexy. I'm going to go hit 140 balls today. 200 balls today. Okay. That's the part nobody's going to see.
Yes.
But that's the thing that actually gets the mission accomplished.
That's right.
That ends up in that photo, which is the vision you want to see fulfilled.
So let's talk about leading others for a moment, because down is the new up,
Down
isn't
is
it?
the new up.
Tell them about it.
Come on. Jesus says, he kind of reveals that the way God has built the world is that the first will actually be last in his kingdom, and the last will be first. And so I tell my kids this all the time as a picture of how to see that. I said, if I needed my plumbing fixed, you might pay me for that. But if I needed my heart repaired physically as a cardiologist, that would take, they're both plumbing, right? But one is a lot more urgent and has a much greater benefit to me.
Yes.
Which one do you think I pay more for? Mm-hmm. And it's, well, obviously, Daddy, the doctor,
right,
specialist, cardiologist makes more for his plumbing than the guy that takes care of the water pipes. And
right.
He does. And why? Because it's a greater value. It serves me more. It's more urgent. It's a more felt need. And I understand its value more. While one is certainly inconvenient, not to demean either, I love to do my own plumbing, as a matter of fact, like I work on a house. But I'm not a cardiologist, and I can't provide that level of service to people because I haven't specialized in training for it. And so in the same way, the greater the problem we solve through serving other people, mm-hmm. the greater the reward is to us for having done it. So if you solve problems, you just make more money. Mm-hmm. And the more problems there's a famous story about a lady in the greater Chicago area who started with a trash truck, and now she has an empire.
Yep.
Right? And so why? Because she couldn't charge more for what she was doing, so she had to serve more people.
That's right.
It all scales.
That's right.
You either have to make more money or you have to serve more people.
Let's go.
But either way, it's serving.
Let's go.
But if you think every day that they're there to serve you, it's never going to scale.
That's right.
Because you're going to be limited by yourself. And so now you haven't found a means to actually scale. And so that's why
you are limited by yourself.
You're totally limited by yourself.
Oh, man.
That's why you have to have a team, too. Mm-hmm. Because at some point, I need somebody to tell me it's worth it. I need somebody to tell me that the sacrifice is worth it. Because if not, I get so hard-headed. Right. Ethan.
Finding your why, right?
That's it. Ethan, as an example, because we were just talking about baseball, he was in the top 20 in the draft, and he had a bad quarter until one of his high school coaches or college coaches saw him on film and called him on the phone and said, dude, you're doing this thing with your hip or your hands or whatever. Fix it.
Yeah.
He did, started blasting it again, went right back.
That's right.
But he slid for a little while because of it. And so it's in the same way.
Nobody's undefeated.
Nobody's undefeated, but you got to have a teammate to say, hey, have you noticed?
That's right.
You've been a little ungrateful lately. You're kind of cranky.
Let's go.
You're coming to work like they owe you this.
Let's go.
That's not going to go.
That's right.
And I love you enough to tell you that those actions aren't going to help you accomplish the mission, and ultimately it's going to cause you to miss your own vision for your life. I'm not doing it because I'm mean. I love you enough, right? Which is serving. And so Jesus says the greatest in my kingdom is a servant of all. And what that looks like is you lay down your life for each other.
It's fantastic.
And you know this. You will not have stronger players for a coach. Like Mike Vrabel is getting lauded all over the place because he's a player's coach.
Right.
Why? Because he has the heart of the men.
Yeah.
Why? Because they know he loves them. He will do what's best for the team, always. But they will also be rewarded to the degree that they contribute to that.
Yep.
And so they know there's not this political game. There's show up, do your job. When you're the best, I'll put you on the field.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So, out of all the things, so obviously, you're living these lessons on your own, just like I do the same thing. Everything that people come to me for advice, I'm practicing the same things I'm teaching, right? So, just part of it. What has been, as you've implemented these things in your life, what's been the biggest game changer for you?
Yeah. In a word, faithfulness.
Faithfulness.
The steadiness part, where we said most people fail, is between self-control and steadfastness.
Yep.
Learning to suffer and the boring middle on the way to transition. So I just pulled it up on my phone, but Psalm 37 says this: trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and befriend faithfulness. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to him, trust him, and he will act and bring forth your righteous deeds as a light and the justice you create like noonday sun. So what that says to me is this: trust the Lord, do good.
Yep.
Befriend faithfulness.
Yep.
And as you do, he will reveal your good works before men. Actually, the scripture says that. Submit yourself under the hand of God, and he will lift you up at the right time. And so I have found when I just said, you know what? It's so boring, but step number 2 there under moral excellence. I'm going to go to bed between 9 and 10 o'clock every night. I don't care. That's just what except for one night a week when we give ourselves the luxury to stay up as late as we want. 6 nights a week, and I told my wife, I'm going to commit this to you, and you may not like it, but I'm not serving us well by staying up till 2 like an artist anymore if I'm not on tour right now. So
Right.
we're going to take the tech out of the bedroom. We put it in the kitchen. We charge it in there. We don't read our phones. We're going to go to bed. I'm going to wake up before you. I'm going to go get with the Lord. And after I've spent time with him, I'm going to get a cup of coffee and bring it to you. Say, good morning, beautiful. Make sure your Bible's there. I'm not going to be your pastor, but I'll be your husband and make sure you have every opportunity. Then I'm going to go exercise and make my body my servant so that I can tell it what to do all day long. Because I'd get my suffering out in the morning, right? Everything else is uphill. And then I'd show up and just committing to do it, not complaining about it, and holding it.
Yep.
Until eventually I lost the tour weight that accumulated. I began to see, wow, I really am changing. Wow, I'm not a night owl because I was an artist for 20 years and still am, but I can actually get up in the morning. I don't burn the candle at both ends. The scripture says we get to pick one. Burn it early or burn it late, but don't burn it at both. That's fear-based work, and we don't do fear-based in the kingdom.
Good. Yes, sir.
The scripture says, unless the Lord builds a house, you're wasting your time. Like watchmen that stay awake all night for no reason. He says it's vain for you to rise up early and to go to bed late, eating the fruit of fearful labor when the Lord can give to you while you sleep. So that steadiness part, faithfulness, when it's not sexy, when you don't enjoy it, I'm just committing. I told the kids that our whole family's had COVID. We've been out of rhythm for about 2.5 weeks. It's been awful. Mm-hmm. I literally sat down, had a family meeting this morning, said, hey, I love everybody. I know we're going back to school now and we're all getting it done. It's still going to be wonky. Daughter, I'm taking you on a date. Henry, I'm taking you out this afternoon. Betsy and I are going out Friday night to get that kind of reestablished. But I just want you to know, Sunday night, we're going to bed because Monday morning we start the rhythm again. Mm-hmm. And they're all like, even my daughter came to me recently. She's like, Dad, we need the rhythm back. I'm like, we do. We need faithfulness.
Consistency trumps intensity, baby.
Every day of the week.
Yep.
And that's what I just tell guys. I actually, on our website, for the listeners, takethehill.tv, I've put together something called the 30-Day Spiritual Transformation Challenge. We call it base camp. You can't take the hill if you don't set up base camp.
Yeah.
So if a guy comes to me and says, Eric, help me with my life, I want to follow Jesus, or they're in a mess, or they're just in a spot, I always ask them this. I say, hey, tell me about your tech habits. When do you go to bed? What time do you get up? What do you eat? Are you exercising? When do you spend time with the Lord? Like, it's the same stuff. And I tell them, just commit for 30 days. I just need 30 days.
That's right.
Because in 30 days, I believe they say...
We call that our $1 Million Month in the business world. We literally have a 30-day program.
That's awesome.
That talks about building momentum and consistency, setting goals, doing what you said you were going to do.
That's it.
Like, that's what the definition of a commitment is to me, is doing what you said you were going to do. Like, literally, it's 30 days.
Yeah.
I love that you said that.
I just need 30. And what's going to happen at the end of 30 days? I'm not going to have to ask you. You're going to come and tell me how much of a difference this has made in your life. See, here's there's this old book called The Wealthiest Man in Babylon. Brilliant financial book. But in there, he says some really beautiful old things. He said, hard work makes a man a better husband. Because he goes on to say, it gives him a good kind of pride, and he will stand taller in his own family.
Love it. Wow.
Man, I mean, I talk to guys all the time. I say, look, if you stop looking at tech after 9 o'clock, you're not going to end up looking at porn all night long.
Yeah.
And you'll be amazed in 2 weeks how brilliant you are. You will come to me and say, I'm a freaking genius. Do you know why? Because it's the same addiction as cocaine.
Yeah.
We know that. When you stop putting that mess in your brain, triggering that all the time, you'll suddenly have this, you'll start to have vision about something else because you're not putting this thing in front of you. And you'll have purpose in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
In 30 days, I literally have had a lady come to me. I won't read it for privacy's sake, but she said, Mr. Bledsoe, nobody's ever told me how to do this. She bought her first Bible through our program.
She probably is very educated as well.
She is, yeah.
And ain't that crazy?
Professional.
That nobody taught this.
Yeah, just the basics.
They taught everything else but this.
How do I actually follow Jesus on Monday? I said, look, the plan was never to come back next week. That makes you dependent on me as a pastor. I don't want you to come back next week. We have a spiritual obesity problem. We can't obey what we know.
Yeah.
So let me just boil it down for you. So I just said, hey, buy a Bible. I literally give them the links to do it, all of the content. I give them reading plans and the whole thing. I say, if you just do she emailed me after the first week. She said, I have 3 kids. I have to get up at 3 a.m. because of their school schedule to pull this off. And after a week, I can tell you, I'm going to do this for 30 years, not 30 days. It's literally been that revolution. She goes, am my dog tired at the end of the day? Yep. Do I go to bed when they do? Sure do. But has it structured and given purpose to my whole life and a framework for me to be more successful at work, more successful as a mother, more successful. Because you have those times in the morning where you can ask yourself those 4 questions.
Yep.
Right? The only other question I add when I speak with people, other than the 4 circles you said, how am I going to be a man of God? How am I going to love my wife? How am I going to love my kids and be the man I'm called to be at work? I add a 5th one, and I would say, how are you going to be a good neighbor this week?
It's crazy. I just added a 5th one right now as we're sitting here.
Yeah.
And it's neighbor. Got it.
Yeah, neighbor. Like, how are you going to love other people? Because those 4 are all internal.
Yep.
And the natural...
I just got better.
The natural tendency of every person and organization is to turn itself inward, and you have to constantly, as a leader, turn it outward, or it will just, it will constantly become ingrown. And so you end up saying, how do we protect it? How do we keep our thing? That's not the gospel. The question is, because of what we have, how do we now go bless other people? That's one of our values at Take the Hill is we want to be pipes, not buckets. So a bucket...
Pipes, not buckets.
A bucket...
There's so much good stuff.
A bucket is the end game. It holds all the resources. But what we know from the Dead Sea is if you don't have an outflow, you become stagnant. Nothing can grow. It becomes dead. That's what makes the Dead Sea the Dead Sea. It has no outlet.
Right.
And so we actually believe that that's shortchanging the gospel. That's what you'll hear some people use the word health, wealth, or prosperity gospel. That's one of the problems with it. It makes you the end user. And the Lord was like, actually, I love you so much, and I'm going to bless you so much that I intend to bless the whole world through you. Mm-hmm. So my dad said he will never give to you what he can't give through you.
That's great.
And so you would never give your money to a bank that wouldn't give it back to you if you asked for it.
Right.
Right? And so, man, do I want to be wealthy? Sure do. But some of my favorite moments are paying somebody else's car payment.
It's fantastic.
Right? When you suddenly realize, hey, and they go, wow, you're so generous. And actually I get to say, no, I have been blessed so much by the Lord in what I do that I can actually share his wealth with you. Man, then they're not only grateful to me, but they're like, what is the matrix that you are uncovering?
That's right.
It was never about this.
Beautiful.
This is just a way I can physically love you in a way that you can receive as love. And ultimately, what I'm hoping to cultivate in you is gratefulness, which in a Christian context, when it's full grown, we would call worship.
That's it. Man. So you and I are going to continue to talk further because I love everything you're doing. Always have. I love what you're doing with Take the Hill. I want to help.
Yeah.
Want to help. So we're going to continue to talk about that.
I appreciate that.
Like, folks, and literally it plays at the beginning of every episode. It's why we launched this podcast is there's so many great people, so many great stories out there, and we all feel like we're alone. We all feel like our problems are unique to us when they're not. Everybody's has very similar struggles, and very similar victories on for the other side. But we brought you here. I mean, honestly, dude, this is you got to be out hitting everybody because I've been hitting the button on the computer nonstop. I mean, there's just been so much gold in this, and we've been going for an hour and a half.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So this has been. I mean, first of all, we're gonna have a follow up. I'm gonna bring you back. We're gonna tell some more stories and
for
all
sure.
that stuff. But I do want to help. But like, folks, all of you are seeking knowledge. You can look at your YouTube history to see that. You can, you know what I mean. Everybody's everybody has influencers or people they look up to and mentors and stuff. Check out what Erik's got going on. So let's make sure everybody knows where they can find all your stuff, first of all. So on YouTube, your name is spelled with a K, Erik with a K.
Erik with a K, that's right.
And Bledsoe is, like everybody else would know, Bledsoe, right? So
correct.
On YouTube, it's just Erik Bledsoe.
That's it. And all the links are through takethehill.tv as well. So under the blog, and we have a show that comes out every Tuesday called Take the Hill.
Yep.
With Erik Bledsoe. And so it's dense, bite-sized chunks. I'm not talking at you for an hour. It's 4 to 15 minutes, like super relevant. And we always ask 4 questions. What do you need to know, and why do you need to know it?
Yep.
What do you need to do?
Yep.
Why do you need to do it? And what's at stake if you don't? And I would say this to the listeners. I know there's a lot of faith involved in this, but I don't believe a person should believe anything Jesus has to say if they haven't experienced his way as better. I would not want a person to buy a product when the reviews were crap. Right. And that's actually part of my mission, because in my experience, a life truly coming to know and follow Jesus has been the deal. It's not what I bought the first time.
Yeah.
But as a man growing into that, being led into that, I thought, God, this is the best product ever. But when I go down on Amazon under Jesus, the reviews are kind of a mixed bag.
Yeah.
Tilted maybe to the bad side. And I'm like, so now it's my job to make sure that I help people actually experience this product the way it was designed.
Yep.
In a copy that like I can hold my head up and say, man, this is the good news. It's actually, that's where the word gospel means, good news. But a lot of folks have not heard good news. And I don't mean good news that like tickles their ears in the sense of like gives them what they want to hear. I mean good news that like sets them free.
Yeah.
It helps them experience what they're actually after, which is wholeness
Yeah.
and peace and longevity and faithfulness, things everyone would agree with. But to do it in a taste test way, to go, man, I understand that you've been hurt. I was hurt too, actually by Christians, and I ran away from my faith. But I'm telling you, I found that Jesus is actually the deal. So with all that religion aside, can I help you just experience it on Monday morning and come into actual relationship with him? And if you don't like it, man, no harm, no foul. Mm-hmm. I don't want you to follow Jesus if you don't love him, if you don't think his way is better. I just want to make sure you get the real sample.
That's it.
So that you can make an informed decision and you don't abandon something because, you were raised or around somebody that hurt you or disappointed you or thought you had to vote a certain way or had some other agenda. I just want you to be whole. I want you to be, the Apostle Paul writes a similar letter to Peter, and he creates it like a target, like an archery target. He said the center is love. But actually, you can't hit that first because outside of that, there's another ring, and that ring is a pure heart. Even that's kind of narrow. The ring outside of that is actually a clean conscience.
Wow.
And the ring outside of that is actually a sincere faith. Sin means to not hit the target at all.
Right.
That's the definition of the word, to miss the mark. And so the first place I start is just a sincere faith. Like, man, what do you actually believe? Why do you believe it? Let's unpack that because you may have some real objections. And we're happy that a sincere faith. But then my next goal is a clean conscience. I literally tell guys this. I just told one of our heads of state. I said, hey, I don't want you to go all the way to loving your neighbor or your enemy. I just want to help you go to bed at night. I want to help you put your head on your pillow and not have shame, fear, or guilt.
Yep.
That's literally the first step after faith. How do we get there? We get there by aligning our life in moral excellence and virtue. And then we take a step towards knowledge because we need some new information.
Yep.
And on that way, then when we had a clean conscience and we're walking in the way long enough, ultimately, we'll arrive at that pure heart, that godliness stage where we know the mind of the teacher, where you'll go, man, I'm not just doing this to have a clean conscience anymore. Now I know why I'm doing it.
Yep.
And now I've grown to this place where I'm whole and I really do have a pure heart. So that even when you do mess up, you can defend yourself to yourself and your team can defend you too. I'll never forget the day my brother and I were in a room and somebody accused me of being a not good person. And I may get emotional when I said it. I remember my own brother, he and I didn't get along a lot at the time. He said, you know what, that used to be true. That's not true of him anymore. That just shows us you don't actually know him now. That was who he was. But I will defend him now to say that's not who he is anymore. That's when you have a pure heart.
That's right.
That's my favorite comment when people come up to say, I know we don't always get along, but God, you're a big teddy bear. And I trust you. Even when you mess up, I know I can come to you and say, hey, you hurt me. I don't think you meant to do. I know you didn't mean to do that. Can we talk it out? That happens to me all the time. I do step on some people, but I don't mean to. Sure. And then being able to trust my heart to say, I know he's got a pure heart, so let's go work on the actions part.
It.
And then ultimately love, where you say, man, I've had a pure heart long enough, and that's that's the end game. It's like, how do I not just have it for myself?
Yeah.
But how do I then go cultivate this in other people?
So good.
Anyway,
so good.
We'll need another podcast to dive into all that.
Absolutely. That's a perfect place to bring it home right there. That's perfect. That's absolutely perfect, dude. Like, so folks, check it out. All the links that you need to know, you can find them at takethehill.tv.
That's it.
If you have just basic questions for Erik, because maybe you're thinking about taking the hill, just shoot him an email. Erik with a K, Erik at takethehill.tv.
That's right.
But like, folks, check it out. Just check it out.
Yeah. And keep tuning in to the Hitstreak. Nick, I'll tell you this, like, we've been friends a long time, but us being friends doesn't end me up in this chair, right? We want to serve each other, and we're after the same thing. And so y'all keep tuning into the Hitstreak too, because there's the kinds of things he's talking about are, in my vernacular, would be kingdom things, ways that we can taste.
That's right.
Leadership. How do we improve ourselves? What are these things? Because as we do, ultimately, we become, we transform.
Yep.
And I hope that eventually that means people, again, stop worshiping the tree and start worshiping the Lord. But it's that the context of beginning to apply the stuff that you're talking about, where they can go, oh man, this is the good stuff. This really is leading to health and wholeness. And
yep.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. It's we're just getting started here with the Hitstreaks. It's going to be a great 2022 is going to be a great year for this podcast. And we're just so I'm always thanking everybody. Honestly, we can't believe the feedback and how much it's grown so fast.
Yeah.
It's exceeded all of our expectations. It's been an absolute awesome ride so far.
Yeah.
And but like I say, we're just getting started. So you'll definitely be back
Yes.
to talk more. I do want to help. You're going to let me know. We're going to talk about, and you're going to let me know how I can do that.
For sure.
I want to be involved. And folks, what I can tell you is, regardless of where you're at in your life and your journey, it's time to take the hill.
Come on.
It's time to take the hill. Folks, thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of The Hitstreak. I'm your man, Nick Hyder, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. God bless.